but Sarah, you've been up to some just all kinds of things here lately.
I feel like it.
I am seeing you teaching. I'm seeing you talking about things. I'm seeing you bringing up topics, doing training, all kind of stuff. Tell me what's going on with you. Because I mean, first of all, I know you first as a public adjuster and a fairly prolific public adjuster too.
Thank
a true
you.
advocate. I really like that.
Thank
but
you.
then you've got all this technology side of the stuff that you do as well. So just tell me about it.
Man, I don't really know how to explain myself or what I do. That's often a huge challenge. I end up just labeling myself things like curious human. I don't know. I really don't know where to start. Basically, most people in the industry are going to know me from trainings. And then I was also a past board member of the National Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. Spoken all over the country. I volunteer about 300 hours per year to nonprofits specifically. So United Policyholders is a big one, also the American Policyholder Association. So you've seen me somewhere.
Yeah,
definitely.
No, I mean that's awesome.
And I'm writing articles. I have a couple of published articles. I've got my own blog, and this is just in the adjusting space. So,
and you do stuff outside the adjusting space too.
Yes, so many things. Again, it's really hard to kind of like, a lot of people are like, I'm a public adjuster, and that is them.
Right.
But I have so many interests and so many passions and so many opportunities, I feel like, too. The tech space is really big for me, just out of interest. A lot of people don't know this, but I definitely have some form of, and it's very common for a lot of people, some form of reading comprehension issues. I don't know that it's actual dyslexia or anything like that, but I do know that when I learned how to code at 14, that's how I learned how to work around my disability or whatever it is, or my different way of thinking, I would say. Because obviously I'm able. So from then, my fascination with technology was technology makes things accessible. It makes things understandable. It's just an amazing tool. And so I've always been interested in it. I learned programming, front-end coding, websites, things like that. And then now that we have AI, I mean, that's just been wonderful as well. So a lot of people assume that I use a lot of AI in adjusting. I actually don't. And that's for a very specific reason. And I don't think people should. In the adjusting piece. In administration, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. Operations, admin. But I feel like people use technology the wrong way. They want to use it to replace thinking. That's not what you want. You want to use technology to replace mundane tasks so you can actually get better at thinking. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
You talk about your disability. I
and I would say it's a different way of thinking for sure.
Well, I kind of appreciate that just because for myself, I was attention deficit before they understood what attention deficit was.
Yeah.
So I was like really good at like multiplication,
right,
and crappy at division. And I had a really exceptionally good, like I knew lots of words, but I only comprehended about 23% of what I read.
Interesting.
So it put me in a really screwed up situation because because we didn't medicate for that. We didn't know what it was.
Right.
So what I did was I bought myself a reel-to-reel tape recorder. Okay. Because you could get like 8 hours on that reel-to-reel. Okay. And what I would do is I would sit down every afternoon and I would read all of the things that I needed to learn. And I would write notes as I did it, but I would read the whole thing and have my 23% reading comprehension.
Right.
And then I would sit down with my notepad and play it back. And my retention went up to about 80%. It went from crappy to exceptional. And so to this day, although I'm medicated and I have lots of ways to accommodate, one thing it did is it gave me a great verbal ability. But the thing is, what I do is most of what I consume that's in written form, I have it read to me. Because I consume it much better when I do that. And to this day, I do that. And I feel like really lucky because I feel like I have this secret power. If I could just have it read to me, I can get it.
Yeah.
And then I can make actionable. And then I learned too that I'm, I can type about 90 words a minute, no problem, but I learned to use, I spent thousands of dollars on Dragon, naturally speaking, and it never worked right. And then I found this little app called Dictanote, and it's free, and it does a better job than all of the things I've paid for 20 years.
Really?
And it's awesome. And I have it just sitting on my computer, and I literally just hit the button, tell it to start, and I dictate like I'm writing a letter. And
that's pretty cool.
The quality of what happens when I do that goes up substantially because it's not dependent on all the coordination. It's a lot easier to get from here to here than it is to get from here to here.
Yes, especially if your mind is a lot faster than your digits.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. I forget what the number was, but you can consume about 700 words a minute, and you could read about 700 words a minute or something like that, and your body, your mind, it takes on about 1,500. So, and the other thing that's just I think's weird about me is that I'm most comfortable with noise when I'm working. Like I need some other noise. I mean, it could be an audiobook, it could be a TV show, it could be a song. It doesn't matter. I have to have something. Usually something that doesn't require too much of my mind, but something nonetheless.
Yeah.
It seems like it holds this part that meanders better.
I would argue that that's more natural than unnatural.
Yeah.
Especially if we look at what industrialization has done to us, how we experience it, rather. I shouldn't say to. We're not victims of anything except our humanity, but that's a whole nother conversation. How we experience industrialization was, like our sleep patterns. We didn't used to actually sleep 8 hours a night. We had, I think it was called second watch. But you go to bed at about, when the sun went down, and then at about midnight, 1 a.m, you'd all get up again and be up for a few hours and then go to bed again. So our sleep patterns and everything how we are experiencing our lives now are not natural. And in nature, if there's complete silence, that means danger. That means there's not. That
is a great point. See,
it means everything around you is either dead, so the area that you're in can't sustain life, so that's red flag number 1, or it means that all of the other animals are quiet because of a predator. So perhaps you having some form of noise is actually a correction to make your environment more natural.
Yes,
to be in your best state. Just thinking.
No, that makes sense. I always say to people that we've only been here in this state of what we have for a very short moment relative to our history as a civilization or as a species. And I said, you have to think about it. It's like even 100 years ago, nobody took warm showers. That notion of like that simple rite of existence that we think of now, they didn't have that.
Now it's a health
Like,
craze.
yeah, and that's like, oh, we have warm water. It's good. But
Yeah.
but the thing is, like my family gets virtually angry with me
Oh,
because well, for a lot of reasons, but they're like, why don't you eat all day? I'm like, I do eat when I want to.
yeah.
I'm like, but I only start at 3:30. And they're like, and when do you finish? I said 8:30. Unless like I want to break it, I could do that, but I don't do it very often. And they go, well, why? I said, because I'm minding how my species is.
Mm.
Because my species didn't graze all day.
Mm-hmm.
They usually had like basically one meal.
Yeah,
and and
absolutely.
I think to some degree, but back to our technology for just a minute. I talk that I've been doing some things with AI, and I think we've discussed a little bit about it. But
Mhm.
the thing that just kills me about AI, okay, is I say it's the same thing that killed me about drones. People thought drones would do things they wouldn't do.
Mhm.
They thought they would replace us on roof inspections, and we could fly them through properties and assess the entire properties, and like all these grandiose things.
Mhm.
And don't get me wrong, I love drones. I do things with drones. They help me to stay safe sometimes.
They're a nice tool. Yeah.
They're a nice tool, but they're a tool. But they don't. But they don't replace anything about me. I
No.
mean, I'm still got to get on the damn roof. Okay, I still have to look at it, touch it, feel it. I still have to walk into a structure and smell it and feel the humidity and know the
Mhm.
quality of what's in there. And I mean, like lots of things. But they have this notion that we can take AI, which is just,
Mhm.
I mean, we have to remember this is the same machine learning we've been using for 10 years. Okay. I mean, like
Yep.
it's not really that new. Um,
Mm-mm. Well, it's
and
and it has been around since the 1950s,
yeah,
60s, so it's
yeah.
really
I
not
mean, we
new.
have better computing power now. And I mean, that's why we can do it. But anyway, they think that like it's going to, like, I've been working on something that will release here shortly, which has AI estimating in it. But it's not
Mhm.
really AI estimating; it's AI assisted estimating. So
Mhm.
it's helping you gather information in the field.
And that's a proper use of it. Yeah.
You have to still make the choices because the
Yes.
machine cannot make the choices. It might figure
Yes.
out that the kick plates and the end caps on the cabinets need to be handled whenever it's put in line items. But you got to tell it what kind of cabinets they are.
Yeah.
You got to tell it what quality the stupid cabinets are and what and maybe even what quality the pulls are. I mean, like you have a lot of things you have to decide.
Yeah. People have
And,
no idea how many decisions they're making within
yeah,
just assessing a claim.
right. And then so that comes back, and all that's going to happen is the machine's going to do that,
Mhm.
but it's not done yet. It's still got to go to a human,
Yeah.
and the human's got to buff it out and then send it back to you just like any other file you touch, and you're still going to touch it because
Mhm.
it's your file, and you're still going to have something you need to address in it that hasn't
Mhm.
done. So it augmented you, but it didn't replace you.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
and and um and
Technology buys back our time, or it enhances our work, but it's still just a tool.
yeah, we have I made a comment to somebody one day. I said, look, I said in 2010 we made a script that would copy an Xactimate estimate and type it into a new estimate.
Mhm.
It was slow, but we let it run all night. But it made it really cheap for us to do like copy estimates.
Mhm.
But it was like 1982 technology. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it was about as advanced as an ATM machine. It's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. And so I get a kick out of it. But what excites me about AI
Mhm.
is there is like I have a lot of employees. If you want my good graces and you work for me, you have to learn what's called the art of the brief. You have to congeal things for me to tell me what's what.
Yes.
And that may be the hardest, most non-human function there is on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, it is literally difficult for people to do that. I have found two people in my entire organization that can do it, and one of them cannot do it regularly. Okay.
Communication is an interesting thing.
So what the base level of, Chat GPT world can do for me is give me an actual brief on some data. It doesn't take away my need to consume the data, but it lets me start somewhere.
Yes. I have a precursory understanding of at least the general idea of what's going on. Yeah.
Right. So tell me this. How did you get to public adjusting?
I've answered this question a lot of times, and I always start it with, like most people, by accident.
That's true.
So like most insurance, anything, it's just, when you're in high school and you take like those, what do you want to be when you grow up, tests that they give you.
Yeah, like nobody does public adjuster, yes.
Yeah, exactly. There's actually a lot of amazing careers and ways to be of service that aren't on there, but they're trying to get kids on a path, right? For better, for worse. We can talk about that later, but basically insurance is not on there. So just like most people, it's by accident. So I had a friend that had awful fire loss, and that's not uncommon. Fire loss, rough time with their insurance company. They hired this person called a public adjuster. Basically, I'd never heard of a public adjuster. And their experience with said public adjuster was also terrible. So I heard all about it, right? And of course, I thought public adjuster was like some kind of it sounds like a chiropractor or some kind of certified practitioner for health. Like, what is an adjuster,
Right.
And, but yeah, so I looked into it, and I was looking for a career change at the time, or just some direction, to change into, because I'm a person that I've always known I was going to be, excuse me, self-employed somehow, or owning a business, or an entrepreneur, or something that was maybe non-traditional. Yeah, it is a condition that needs to be managed. Yeah, entrepreneurship, or having any kind of just lots of ideas. It's to be managed, that's for sure. To be fruitful and to be enjoyable. But
right.
But yeah, and I looked into it, and I was like, this is weird. It's perfect, because it's this blend of it is a carve out to practice contract law for insurance policies. That's how attorneys describe it. It really truly is. And back to the learning comprehension, I already knew I was not going to college. I wouldn't actually be able to do it. Maybe could now, but I already knew, I barely passed high school. And it's obviously not because of a lack of intelligence. It's just like you. It's like the format of the delivery and the format of communicating to my educator that I have comprehended, said information, it's not compatible with me. Now, I've always been a lifelong learner. I always learn. I can thank my mother for that. So I'm always been in study, formal and informal, my whole life. But traditional school, as soon as I could get out of there, I was like, I'm not ever coming back. So,
yeah, I have a joke about that. But I've always told my kids, I'm like, they said, well, what was you like in school? I said I remember the first day I went, and I remember the last day I went, and I hated it equally on both days.
It's just, get me out of here. Like, what are we doing here? So, and I did have some educators that were amazing. Specifically, one of them taught me how to code in the first place. So wow. I was in grade 6. And so you do get some amazing educators. So it's the system itself, the way that it's administered and set up, which is, I feel, ineffective, not the educators. Let me
Oh, I
make that
agree.
clear.
I agree
Um,
perfectly. Yes.
but yeah, so I was like, I would love to be an attorney, but I'm just probably not going to go to law school. And this was at the time. I might now. You never know. But I was like, so, okay, we've got that. We've got meteorology. We've got construction. I love construction. I'm a bush girl from Canada. I love all kinds of mechanical things, and it's just skills you learn, right? Just being out in the bush because there's no one to save you.
You never told me
Every
you were from Canada, but I knew you're from Canada because when you say out, I know you're from Canada.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, if you're anyone that's from rural Canada, you have to know certain skills and whether you like it or not, and you figure out quickly that you do like it, especially because you have to know these things. There's no AAA to come get your car if you popped a tire on a logging road going out to camp. There's just no, the cavalry's not coming. You need to be self-sufficient and you need to be multidisciplinary. It's not the place that you get to be a specialist and not learn about
Right.
anything else.
Right.
And so I think that's part of why public adjusting for me, I was like, let me get into this and see what it's about because it's so multidisciplinary. I'm not going to get bored. That was my other fear.
It really is. I never thought about it that way, but it
Yeah.
really is. But but the other thing is, like, this is the thing that always gets me about public adjusters. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I call public adjusters that they have superpowers because they have something that I do not have.
Oh, what's that?
I think I'm a super nice person. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not well fitted for somebody calling me at 9 o'clock at night crying from the Walmart parking lot because their wife wants to leave them because their insurance claim hasn't paid yet.
Yes.
Like,
And their
that
ALE
is-
just ran out. And
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of it. And the only reason I know that is because years and years and years ago, I've always tried to tour the entire industry. Okay. I wanted to understand it. I like the idea of being able to see it from everybody's point of view.
Yes.
And when I first got in the industry, I didn't know what a PA was.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, when I first got in the industry, I didn't even know what there was any animus in the industry. I thought everybody just got along.
Yeah, you're like, this is so cool.
This is so cool. I just tell them what they need and they do it. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Look, I write this estimate and they go, okay, that looks good. And so, back in the day.
We're helping people and yeah.
Exactly. But so I said to this PA, I said, I wish I could understand more what you do. He says, I'm going to make you my general manager.
Mm.
He says,
okay, trial by fire then.
He says, so I'm going to make you my general manager. So I'm going to get you to interface with the carrier a lot on this 100 claims.
Sure.
And so that's what I did. And I started understanding the inside of that world a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was so cool. But I told him during that time, I said, the part of this I can't do is the 30 days before ALE runs out.
Mm.
It's the fact that a lot of people do, they say when you get a fire, you get a divorce, it's trauma.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And, and I mean, I said, you're always dealing with people on their worst day.
Yes.
It's
Including
their worst
other
day.
Professionals.
Yeah. And I said, so I said, so they've got, I said, I told this guy one time, I said, you're the only positive thing they see.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that is a incredible responsibility. I said, and it's got to make you lose sleep. And I said, I don't know if I could do it. I have a hard enough time with other parts of the industry that frustrate me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just always, I think the PAs are awesome. I also think I wish the PAs would talk publicly about the good they do more.
Mm-hmm.
Because all we ever hear about is the scallywags that write up $1 million estimate for $100,000 loss.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
When
they're the bad
you
PR.
have this tremendous number of PAs that like even the industry likes to work with.
Yes.
You're a good PA when they start referring you work because they found somebody that needs a little more help.
Yep. I call them colleagues. Very much believe they are colleagues
They
that
are.
work for insurance companies, including insurance company counsel. We can't be friends in real life, but because of who they work for. But there is a respect and an understanding between commensurate professionals about this. I would also challenge that public adjusters do the same, to recognize you had mentioned perspectives. The last thing I want to hear is the rhetoric of insurance companies are evil, insurance company adjusters are horrible people, the things that you hear on both, we'll say sides, but perspectives. You have to realize what's happening is there's corporations with interests, and then there's the human beings that are meant to administer those interests. And those human beings are also just trying to make a living. It's not an excuse for some of the negative things we see, whether that be with public adjusters or staff or IAs or anyone. But it is an understanding that you must start from. So just like you wanted that brief, the brief is, if you're going to ask someone to understand your perspective, you also need to first understand someone else's perspective. Once you can understand someone else's perspective, then you will be able to properly communicate what you do. Only then.
Exactly.
You have to go outside of yourself first.
Yesterday, because I preach this a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
So I always kind of police myself if I'm like minding my own rhetoric. Okay.
Yeah.
So yesterday, my insurance called me. My insurance company called me, or my adjuster called me. She hasn't called me in a long time. She did recently issue a payment that was a pretty substantial payment for my loss. It wasn't enough, but it was still pretty substantial. And she called me with not the best news. She called me to tell me she was issuing my contents payment for $13,000. Okay. Now, the problem with this is it does not take a brain surgeon to know that my bedroom and my bathroom and our master closet were completely burned.
Yeah.
And I don't know a woman in the United States that has less than $13,000 worth of shoes, much less clothes. Okay. Like,
Yes.
Come on. Okay.
Yes.
And so
if
anyway,
there's memes about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I said when we were doing our contents claim, I said, I'd always wished that I would die first. So my wife, so I wouldn't be around for my wife to know how much my cambric would cost.
Yeah.
and then I did her shoe inventory, and I'm like, I don't feel bad anymore. Not bad at all.
No.
But anyway, so they give me the $13,000, and I said, you don't actually think that's enough. I mean, you just gave me an estimate to completely gut my entire home. Like no drywall, no electrical, no plumbing, no floors, no nothing. Everything bare, just boards. That's all I got. And she says, yeah. And I said, and so you think that $13,000 is going to be the content? I said, supposing the contents weren't damaged, it cost me more than that to pack it out just to do that demo.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I haven't gotten your contents detail yet. And I said, yeah, actually you have. And she says, why do you think I have? I said, because you gave it to the lawyer that did the examination under oath. I said, if you'll read my examination under oath, we talked about the 1,600-page estimate. And she's like, I don't think so. I'm like, yes, you do. So I resent it to her. But what I did before I got off the phone with her, I said, I want to thank you for calling me. I want to thank you for getting that check out to me.
Yeah.
I want to thank you.
It's a hard call to make.
I said, you don't know this about me, but some of the best people I know in the business do the work you do. And I said, and I appreciate that you're an evangelist and you have to go advocate for everything you do with me.
Yeah.
And I said, and I know that's not easy. I just want to say thank you.
She doesn't hear that. She doesn't hear that from anybody, not from her.
And
nobody.
But I do mean it. but I do mean it.
Yeah.
She's, you know, it, you know, I actually think she's got a terrible job, like that I would never want.
It's rough. Yeah.
No, because like she's got to figure out what's important, and then she has to take it up the line and advocate for it.
Yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's not an easy job. I don't care who you are. Okay,
Yes.
I would not want that job. I could not. I don't do well in those kind of boxes.
Mm-hmm.
But we're gonna get that worked out. Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna
get that reconcile what's important to you versus what's important to the guidelines, and it's a lot.
And we're gonna work that out. And you know, I even talked to my adjuster one day, and I said, look, I said, I need you to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
I said, everything I do with you affects me and my industry.
Yeah.
I said, so this really isn't about me and you. It's me being careful that I don't do anything here that's untoward that could affect me somewhere else. I said, so I'm kind of being conservative about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I said, also understand that at some point, if we don't work it out, I have to give it to somebody else to handle for me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you need to know I know the best in the industry. And I said, if I ever pull that trigger, I said, it's going to complicate your life, and I don't wish to do that. I said, so I'm not going to push you. I'm going to ask you. Just please, can we get this done? Because I want to be able to say to everybody that, boy, they did it right. It took a while, but they got it. I said, because I think you could do that. And so I always say, I always tell people when they negotiate, I said, you can kick before you hug. You can hug and not kick.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely need to hug after you kick.
Yes, 100%. Yeah,
and that's one of the hardest things for people to do. And
we're no one's fighting people. We are up against, and I won't even say fighting guidelines, or up against guidelines, misunderstandings. It's all a massive communications and goals issue. But the people, we have to keep that separate, and it's a very challenging thing, but it can be done.
I have a public adjuster that I've dealt with for years, who is he's one of the very best public adjusters I've ever met. He is probably one of the most disciplined humans I've ever met. And it doesn't matter if he's gotten the same policy 100 times. When he gets the file, he sits down and reads the entire policy twice.
You have to, yes.
And you
have to assume that it might be wrong.
He consumes it
than the others. Yeah.
And I have seen this guy say so many times, could you tell me where that was in the policy? In my review, I did not find it. And it is the strongest statement I ever see somebody use on a claim. I did not locate that.
Yep.
And the I will tell you this though, Sarah, I'm very nice, and I think I say everybody's the claims tribe, because I think we all wear the same jersey. I think there is one group of people that do not wear our jersey.
Oh.
I do. It's just, I'm being honest here. I'm being very honest. One second. Hey, I'm gonna call. Okay. Okay. See you in a bit. All right. You always have to answer with what. No matter what. I always tell her I always answer a call because I want her to answer mine when that day calls when I need her. But there's one group that bothers me. Okay.
Okay.
And that is, I see a lot of defense litigators, not defense attorneys. I'm talking about defense litigators, the guys who go to court. And what bugs me is simply this. If you lie in the furtherance of adjusting a claim, you have committed a felony. You've risked your license. You have risked
you just shouldn't do it.
You shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And that is an understood thing. Matter of fact, they print it on everything they give you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an understood thing in life.
Yeah, in life. Okay.
Yeah.
But I watch these defense attorneys, I watch them head into court and administer a kind of litigation that would get you disbarred in other forms. Like, I'll just give you an example. This is an actual case with the most sanctioned defense attorney, the most sanctioned attorney in the state. Okay? This is Honey. She likes to be on TV.
Hi, Honey. Cute.
Anyway, but he's like, this guy gets sanctioned by the Supreme Court in Florida all the time.
Okay.
He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. He's been suspended for 90 days at a time, multiple times.
Okay.
For doing things like threatening the insured with jail time, stuff like that. Like,
that's really nice.
Really, okay. So, so just set this up in your head. We've got a visual. Yeah. We got a guy who's a professor. He's about 76 years old. He teaches history at the college. He looks like an absent-minded professor. Okay. He owns 2 pieces of rental property. Both of them have insurance claims. The first one he goes to, and it's the same adjuster on both of them, but the first one he goes to, he comes in through the back door. It's a rental property.
Right.
He walks through the front door and opens it up, and the adjuster's there, and he's walking around the house, and he walks up to him and says, "Professor, do you have damage inside your home?" And he says, "I don't live here. I just ran through here. I didn't see anything. But like I said, I hadn't been here long."
Okay. I kind of see where this might be going already. All right. Let's see.
The guy says, "Thanks," gets in his car and drives away. Fast forward 3 years. It lands in court.
Okay.
The defense attorneys perpetuate a lie that he barred them from doing an inspection on the interior of the home. Now, any adjuster you would ever walk up to, I don't care, we could pull them at random and say, what would happen if somebody didn't let you in the home? They'll always say, "Oh, we'd have to at least sign a waiver. We have to look at everything." Yeah. Like everybody that I know who ever took, if you ever took an adjusting course anywhere, it's in there. Okay. I don't care where you are. It's the same thing. Yeah. I mean, it is basic. It's a basic triage. We look at everything. It's the same reason why
your company would have trained you to do that.
In a number of things. You got it. So at any rate, they perpetuate this lie. They perpetuate this lie with fervor. And in 12 minutes, the jury ruled for the defense. And the professor lost $167,000 worth of damage.
That's interesting.
He had to take a loan out to fix his place. Now, I understand vigorously, working for your client. But vigorously supporting a strategy that says we destroy insureds is not fair dealing. And that's not me being evil. That's not me being judgmental. I do not think the furtherance of a lie in any point of our game works.
We have two camps of professionals when it comes to that type of ethics.
Well, that's true, but I watch plaintiff attorneys left and right. I watched them walk into court, and I watched them say to me, and I've probably had 100 different attorneys in the last 2 years say to me, "Is there anything in this estimate that shouldn't be here?" Yeah. I don't want to ask for anything that's not necessary and appropriate, period. They usually put me in there as expert because I'll always look at something and say, even in the middle of trial, and say, hey, we need to take this out of here. This don't belong.
Mhm.
Because I don't, because we're just going to do it right. But
Yes.
so I would say that we have a weird camp within the claims tribe that is not working for our best interest. And the problem is they're kind of like, it's kind of like having terrorists.
Yeah.
They sow bad will.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And so that's what concerns me. But
it's definitely there's the technically people. So there's
right.
like two camps of ethics. There's the technically people, or the by the law people, or the rules say this. If the rules don't say that, then let's do it. And then there's normal people where we're like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. We weigh other considerations than and we have that discipline within ourselves, rather than relying upon, okay, well, there's no stop sign, so
right. That's
there's no one to enforce stopping at the stop sign.
There's always that argument that if the county's not going to enforce it, then we're not going to pay for it.
Oh, that will be an entire podcast episode, but I have proven that entire thing erroneous. Enforcement is not required, even if it's a stupid connotation. I actually have found something. I have found something that works extremely well. Okay. You know that everybody wants the permitting department to write them a letter. Yeah, but if you mention the word insurance, permitting department is out of there.
Yeah, they're out of there. So I figured out a way to do it. And other professionals can do it. But the insured has to be in cahoots at some point. Okay.
Informed.
Yeah, they have to be somewhere. So what I did on my own claim, okay, is I called the permitting office and I said, I need some help. I need you to visit with me on my property and tell me what it's going to take for you to issue a building permit on this property.
Yep. That's the proper way to ask. Yeah.
And they showed up, and this dude walks in. He says, you got something to write with?
He's ready.
And he just literally just for about 45 seconds tells me exactly what we're going to do. He also told me at the end of the thing, and he says, oh, and one more thing. He says, after you do all this demo and you get that engineer, he says, if that engineer goes up there in that attic and all that metal's rusted, then we're going to tear your house down.
Oh, okay.
He says, like, all the way down. He says, good thing you got it. We could probably use the same slab, though.
Oh, yay.
But I mean, like anyway, so like when I sent the estimate and I said, this is what this building official told me, this is his email, this is his phone number, and this is what he told me. And consequently, they didn't fight me on that.
Yeah.
Because it was enforced.
Yeah.
And I've done that on about 30 losses so far. And it works like a dream because it takes away this whole notion that it's not being enforced. Incidentally, we tell, I tell all these independent adjusters, I'm like, I need you to call the OSHA closest to you and take whoever your OSHA inspector is out for lunch or for coffee. And I just need you to let them talk to you about all the things they expect. I said, and then get their card. And then every time you run into that situation, you now know what they expect. You say, I met with such and such who said that this is what they expected on this loss. Here's the inspector's information, and this is the scope items that were. And they always come back and they go, they paid for it. They paid for it.
Because you got outside of yourself first.
Right.
And learned a new perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you end up in Minnesota?
I mean, my parents moved here. Very boring. So boring. It's nothing exciting. We emigrated to the U.S. and that's that is about it.
Do you have a do you still want to like pull up the code? I said, do you try to pull up the code for like roof troughs instead of gutters?
Oh my gosh. So Canadian building code is a whole nother, it's like it bothers me. I have an issue, ICC, with how things are applied in my mother country. Just my grandparents, for example, have a fully encapsulated roof, and I hate it. I think it's the worst idea on the planet, but it is what it is. They have no attic space. They have a fully finished attic right up to, so it has to be that way, but very common in Canada. And Canada has the same freeze thaw cycle that, northerly states in the US have. So yeah, roofs in Canada suck for that reason.
We have a lot of customers in Canada, and I number one, I like Canucks because they usually pay their bills without being bothered by it. Like it seems like
they will lose sleep if they've been a day late.
Yeah,
they're not going to feel good about themselves for like 2 years.
Yeah, so
they'll forget about it, and then in a couple days they'll I paid his bill a day late. Like
But they have over in Saskatchewan, they have was it Saskatchewan General Guarantee Insurance or something like that, SGI. It was their like insure of last resort.
Okay.
And they also, it was part of their social safety net. You got that insurance if you became unemployed or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
And they did the coolest thing for so many years until Crawford got there. They told the insured, have your contractor there. And then they walked in with those 3-part forms, like the it was OCR paper, NCR paper. Anyway. And so they would
one's pink, one's white.
Yeah. So so the adjuster will walk through and talk to the contractor, and they'll write a scope.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes one and hands it to the contractor and says, send me an estimate.
Mm-hmm.
He keeps one and he gives one to the insured.
Mm-hmm.
A few days later, the contractor sends it in. He calls up the insured and says, I'm going to pay your contractor now. And it's just like they worked on scope. And it was it was the coolest thing ever. And then, of course, they got Crawford and that changed.
Well, and we have, part of that is we have a very, Canada's interesting. A lot of people don't quite understand how Canada works, but we have like 2 concurrent worlds. We have a Francophone and an Anglophone world, and everyone falls into one of the 2 essentially. And within that, there's not really any division of skin or anything like that. Like, I was never called black until I came to the United States. I thought it was a racial slur at first. I'd never heard it. My mom and dad had to explain to me how the US is just different, and neither better nor worse. Every country's got social issues and not even issues, but just different ways that people interact with each other. But within that, we have a very homogenous society as far as our conduct and our thought. Extremely homogenous.
Yes.
And that's why that works.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. If you do something bad, you've literally screwed over your neighbor or your relative, and everyone will hate you for it. Part of it, but also you care about your neighbor as if it were yourself. It's also a cold weather country. Without each other, we would die back in the day. So part of where that comes from.
I used to live very near a small town that was, if not dead, close to it. But it had like a lot of empty property. It was kind of a sad place. Okay. And it was in the deep south of the United States, where you expect there to be disharmony by race. Okay.
And my experience is the opposite.
But there is there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Like there's no such thing. And it's because they're on this island together.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sincere reliance that just supersedes all things. So like, you go to church there, and it's everybody.
Yeah, it's just
And it's
you're from your town. That's it.
and
Yeah,
like the most,
absolutely.
like, I always thought the funniest thing about that little town was the only real prejudice anybody had was they didn't trust the little people, because they have like some little
Oh man.
it's like you can't trust those little people. They can get their hands in anywhere.
Oh my gosh. You know what's fascinating is I've traveled most of the United States, and I love the United States and Canada equally. People are like, which one do you like better? Like, would you choose a parent you like better? No. Okay, they're
Right.
different and you love them both. So, but especially like IAs, I freak out IAs the most because we'll, so
Yeah.
we'll have like hailstorms here and things, and IAs come from down south. They do their rounds and do their, cat claims for the summer. And I love adjustments. I think they're fun because I'm like, who are you? Let's hang out. We're hanging out for an hour. Yeah, we're looking at property, but there's all these people you get to meet. And they're shocked because they're like, you're the same person as me. And I'm a bush Canadian. I grew up listening to the same music, doing the same activities, but they're from the South. And so it's very, very fascinating. I always tell people, if you want to be a good public adjuster, you need to learn how you can harmonize yourself with other people, not change yourself, but find out what you have in common past activities.
Yeah. Well,
you are. Most people are extremely similar.
Yeah. Well, I train a lot of people on appraisal, and I tell them something that just always gets them, really, like, just so starkly gets them that they're like, really? And I say, your job is not to look at the claim, really, at first. That's not your first cause. Your first cause is to make this person that showed up your friend. I said, you have an incredible opportunity to make them your friend. And they always kind of buck me on that. And I tell them about an appraisal I had years ago. This particular appraisal was, if you just imagine, if you know anything about Florida, it was like 2 hours from Fort Lauderdale. Like, there is nothing
so way
close.
Out there.
Yeah, nothing close to that. Like in like nowhere. Okay. And in this little community, there are 7 houses. Okay. So the 68 and 72-year-old that lived there had a storm. It damaged their roof pretty badly. And they called everybody they could call, and no one would show up, because who's going to show up and drive 2 hours there and 2 hours back, right?
Right.
They call the carrier and say, oh, carrier, please, can you send somebody? And they say, we don't have anybody to come.
Wow.
So it's just a terrible event for them. They're living in squalor, so their kids come get them and take them out. Okay? By the way, the worst part of this one is this lady was a retired administrator for a insurance that third party administrator.
Cool.
So she kind of knew.
Terrible.
She kind of knew, like, oh no, this is terrible. So anyway, we go out there. We go out there, and like, this place has like dimensional mold. Okay, I mean, it's bad. Okay.
Yeah.
And we start looking at the place, and he's just like, I'm just gonna have to write this up at like 10K. And I knew just right then, I'm like, I have a major problem with this guy, and I don't want to do this. So we looked at it for a few minutes, and then I basically forced him to sit on the back of my truck with me. And I didn't say one single thing about the loss. I plumbed this guy's life until I found some commonality, and he is a prick. Okay, like when they wrote it up in the dictionary, this guy's a prick. You wouldn't. People do not like this guy. If he was walking through the grocery store, you'd be like, I don't know, that guy looks mean.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I do that with this guy, and about 30 minutes into it, I realized that we haven't talked about the loss in about 25 minutes. And I say to him about 40 minutes into it, I say, would you give me some time to see what happened here? And then we can revisit this and talk about it.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. I said, this place is kind of in the middle of nowhere. And that had to affect things. He said, yeah, probably so. And we got in our car and drove away, and we settled it 3 days later.
That's nice.
The next time I saw that guy, we talked about cryptocurrency for 30 minutes out front.
What?
Went in, it worked on the file, went outside, opened a computer, and settled the claim.
Mm-hmm.
Like within an hour.
And the important thing is you would have done that whether you guys settled the claim or not.
Yeah. And the thing was, I do umpire work for this guy now.
Mm-hmm.
And I call him to ask advice some days. Because what I found is he's a really good guy that's wrapped up in kind of a prickly package, but he's a really good guy. And, most people in our industry are really good people. And here's the thing that I find that's mostly cool that I haven't seen, but I've seen more here lately. I see all these independent adjusters up in their game. Like up in their game because in their heart of hearts, what they want to do, they got in the business for one reason. It's the same reason the rest of us did. We want to make a living and do good things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's kind of exciting to me. I will tell you what concerns me though, is it concerns me badly when I see things like Seek Now.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys basically taking a 1099 contractor and taking an app that's, deficient, and then basically putting together a deficient estimate to start a process that is going to spin out of control at some point.
Yeah, I wrote an article on trust, so that type of thing. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, sometime call me and I'll tell you more about that. I have some other knowledge about it that's just
we'll
really
have to
saucy.
Chat about that. Yeah, there's so many things I want to bring up too, but we'll talk about that later. But it's the Brickley thing is we have when you were talking about the insureds, calling people at 9:00 at night and to have a claim, to have a house fire, to have a divorce, that kind of thing. People don't realize that just within our work, we're actually exposed to the same stressors and the same type of stress that first responders are subject to, including attorneys. Whether you're a contractor, an expert witness, an adjuster, any kind of adjuster, claims manager, in-house attorney, litigation attorney, whatever that looks like, we're exposed to a lot of that. Most people don't realize it, so they're not mitigating it at all. And so you get this thing called negativity bias. So we're all reacting to each other then. We're expecting, like I talked to, this is a few months ago, I had talked to a large loss adjuster. We just settled an HOA claim through appraisal. And I was just calling to get payment information. And I always love to chat with people. I'm a social butterfly. It's terrible. I just I'd get no business done. And he goes, geez, you're really nice for a public adjuster. So they say, hey, how are you? And then I shut up. And I actually asked him how he was doing, and I listened. And he was like, no one asks me that. And he had allegedly, he told me that he'd just gotten off the phone. He was talking to a public adjuster he was calling him pretty terrible names just because he wouldn't pay the claim. And it's a very interesting state of affairs. So we have the negativity bias. And then we also have something called vicarious trauma. Vicarious means through, from. And not only with the insureds that we're coming in contact with, but it's multiplying 70 different ways, right? Through other professionals and also to our families as professionals, to our pets. So there's something, so that vicarious trauma then can turn into things like burnout. There's always that joke. If you can make it for public adjusters, if you can make it past the first or second year burnout, you've made it. Because it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you first come in, whether you're an IA, staff adjuster, public adjuster, most public adjusters, when they come in, they're like, I am saving people. They make it their personality. They make it their life. And there is a delicate balance and a proper way to make it a vocation, but not make it you. When you make it you, which a lot of public adjusters do, and I just will have I'll teach a course on it. Like, it's so important. It's your job is not you. And you have to let go of the outcome. You have to focus on the process and your behavior. You cannot focus on controlling the outcome. That will come in time, naturally.
That's some very
You have to let that go.
That's some very good advice.
And so we get compassion fatigue too.
Well,
so interesting.
Sir, I during Hurricane Katrina, I can honestly
That's
tell
where
you
that phrase was coined, by the way, compassion fatigue, from that hurricane.
that was special. In many ways, that was special. I still have trouble remembering a whole chunk of my life working that claim because I only slept about 3 hours a night, and it was just this. Every day looked the same, and to this day, I'll run into a claim and I'll look at a structure and I'll be like, "Man, this looks so familiar."
Yeah,
you're back to the same. But I was doing this. I was doing this psychiatric hospital, and
wow.
And the doctor who was the head of the psychiatric hospital was my client. She was there, and I was doing my thing, and she walked up to me while I was assessing her. Well, and she says to me about 30 seconds into our conversation, she said, "How you doing, David?"
Like,
I said,
I don't know.
I said, I'm doing good. And she says, "I don't think so." And I said, and I said, "Why would you say that?" She says, "Well, first of all, that response just told me I was right." She says, "That's an anger response. That's defensive."
Yeah.
She said, I said, "Why do you think I'm not doing well?" She says, "It's that 5-gallon bucket of trauma you have that you're carrying around with you." And she said, "Listen," she says, "you cannot look at all this pain all day long, every day, and not collect it."
Yeah.
And after a while, it gets really heavy and you find yourself crying in a place you don't know why you're crying, or getting angry when you don't
cry
know.
on adjustments with me.
And she said, and she talked to me about ways to ameliorate that. She says, but the biggest thing is to be conscious of it.
Yes.
She said, because you can mitigate the problem by being conscious of it. Most of us, most of the people in your industry are like, "I'm strong." And,
yes.
and, you know, like I was, I've always carried that with me, but I was out at a loss in Jacksonville, Florida, and I had this complete prick of an engineer I had to meet out there. I mean, he was terrible. Like, he was like, "You are small, you are tiny little estimator." You know what I mean? Like, it was just, he was just acting like you don't matter. You know, like that worst kind of with the most disrespect, the thing that makes you just want to say, "Well, call me when you're finished," kind of thing, and walk away.
Yeah, do your thing. Okay.
And so we're walking through this church, and I say to him, I said, I look kind of at his age and everything. I said, "You were Katrina, didn't you?" And this guy was standing next to some stairs, and just by saying that word, that guy sat down on the stairs and hung his head.
Yes, he's untreated. Yeah.
And he said yes. And that guy talked to me about Katrina for 45 minutes straight, and said, "I never talk about Katrina because it hurt so much." And he did that, and we still work together because it was okay for us to, because we had the same vulnerability.
Yes.
And I just think I have high hopes for our industry. I really do.
Yeah.
I have high hopes.
There's always hope.
Because I think at the end of the day, I think I see an ebb where I see more and more people in the industry realize we're all on the same team.
Yes, absolutely.
And when we start realizing that we're on the same team and we go back to collaborating, I think the outcomes change. And I'm not going to tell you how I know this, but I'm going to tell you what I know. There is lots of technology coming, and there are people there are people that run large carriers who are looking at some technology, and they're still going to apply those same rules that they're putting on the adjusters.
Yes.
With that technology, nothing's changing about our game. Nothing. It's just to some degree we need to be more science-based.
Yes.
Now, we will have to talk.
I just taught a CE and CLE course on that. Matter of fact.
We should have a talk sometime. We should have a talk sometime about one thing. We should talk about how in the world it's happened that science has become equated with being wrong. I can show you example after example after example where the most scientific based data is absolutely met with vitriol.
Really?
Like when you have a good window testing company.
Yeah.
A good window testing company runs off a standard.
And I love fenestration.
Yes, fenestration is great. But like it's the one thing that when you look at it, you don't know what you're seeing. Okay?
Yeah.
So you have a guy that shows up that works a particular standard and works within that standard and publishes all their results. They are agnostic. They could care less. Okay. They're just about the data. It's like a meteorologist. I just do weather. They don't care about claims. So, but I watch these guys routinely say, I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
I don't buy it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I'm like, you don't buy it. I'm like, you drink coffee? You're like, yeah. I said, do you know how coffee is made? Yeah. Well, if I said I don't buy it, I don't think that's the way it's made, would you think I was crazy? It's like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's because it's kind of a scientific principle. It does the same thing. It always works the same way. Yeah. But I mean, I watched them in court yesterday, say to a very good window testing company, the head of it, who's also a Canuck, by the way, and said, where they said to him, he says, you just pushed water at that thing until it let water through. And he's like,
I have some words, but yeah.
He says, and he just looked at him and goes, I don't mean any respect, but what you just said was crazy.
Yeah.
Like what you just said was crazy. And it was just this thing. And I mean, I have an appraisal where we tested the windows. And now my opposing is bringing somebody in to test the windows.
Yeah, to already test the window.
I was like, why would you spend all that money when we already just did it?
They don't trust you.
That's right. They don't trust me because they think I'm. Because what I actually asked him, I said, do you think I'm being fraudulent? Do you think that?
Those are very important questions to ask. Do you think my data is incomplete, incorrect, or do you think I'm being fraudulent? And those are some very, very good questions to ask, because sometimes you'll find they don't think any of those things. They just, it's something else. That's something else. We don't know what it is, but it could be they just want a different result. Or,
I asked him, what I asked him was, I said, you must think I'm fraudulent. And if you don't, you must be looking for refuge if you're going to pay for this.
Yes.
And he said, there's not a chance in the world I'm going to pay for it. And I said, then you've already set your outcome. Why are you even doing the testing?
Yes.
And and then of course I promptly had somebody tell the umpire that we got some science that they're going to have to look at. Don't dare push the science away because that would be bad for their insurance.
I teach an entire course. I taught it for the Mid-Atlantic Public Adjusters Association a couple of years ago. It's nothing but how to actually apply critical thinking within claims. And it's the actual critical thinking. People don't realize it is a actual process. It is a practice, and it is a lifelong practice and vocation that constantly needs to be actively engaged in. And within that critical thinking, if you can apply those principles within adjusting, it makes it so much easier. Like in my state, we have just a few attorneys or law firms. I very rarely
right?
have matters that go to appraisal, go to an attorney, whatever. I was shocked when I heard that some other states, it's basically straight to an attorney. I was like, why? Don't you do adjusting? Like, that's last resort. Like, you shouldn't, and some states are different. So I shouldn't say shouldn't, but I was shocked. I didn't have the perspective yet, right? And, but if you use critical thinking, like, I don't hire engineers. I very rarely hire experts unless it's actual scientific expert subject matter, not just because I want to be intellectually lazy. But it's just, if an engineer is hired, there's all this stuff now, like, what are their standards? What are they supposed to do? And I'm like, if you just learn critical thinking, you don't have to hire an engineer or do all of these things. You as the adjuster can handle it. It just, I don't know.
Well, I have the thing that gets me, okay, is I know a particular public adjuster in South Florida, and he rejects about 10 out of 12 claims that comes through his door because they don't have enough damage to warrant them filing a claim.
Yes, that sounds about right. Not everything needs to be filed.
But even the guys who do half that good are still usually going out and taking a claim that's a $10,000 nuisance and trying to turn it into a $110,000 nuisance. And that's a problem. It's a really bad problem. I have a terrible problem on one right now. That the appraiser for the carrier didn't actually write an estimate. They had an engineering firm come review it and write an estimate.
Okay.
The problem was the engineering firm put all these dots on the damn roof and said minor damage, major damage, flashing damage, and they listed all these damage on 5 different elevations of the roof. And yet scripted it for a $1,400 repair.
Cool. That's terrible.
And so I said to the guy, I'm like, so did you read I said, did you just look at the pictures and the schematic on your engineer report? He's like, yeah. I'm like, don't you think that looked like it might be different than what the estimate was? He's like, nope. He's like, I stand with their estimate.
Okay.
I'm like, well, I just told him, I said, I don't know anybody that wants to replace a 3-year-old roof.
Right.
But you can't tell me that replacing pieces of 5 elevations with shingles that don't exactly match is a proper repair.
No, plus if it was put on all at once in the first place, you're also introducing maintenance that was never there before. You have incongruent age of the materials, even if there were a match. There's lots of issues.
Yeah, and the other problem is like even Xactimate says you'll have trouble finding somebody to do this job. It says it in the actual note.
The contractor has to warranty that. Yeah, if it leaks, then they have to replace it. But
you buy it. Yeah. You bought the roof. So So I'm in a quandary because the truth is that the guy for the carrier didn't prove his case one little bit. But it looks like his opposing proved his case. It's terrible. I feel bad for both of them. I think they both stink, and they both could have done a better job. I think we could also teach all these adjusters, no matter who they are, to do claims investigations like they did in 1952.
Okay.
In 1952, when they went out, they showed up, they talked to Miss Smith about her loss, and they talked to her about her policy. And said, if we find the damage, you're going to have this much deductible. And then after they looked at the loss, they went and knocked on the neighbor's door and said, "Did you have damage from the storm?" And went to the neighbor after neighbor after neighbor and found out if like there was some kind of density of claims here.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they wrote up their report, they said, "It appears that the whole area was damaged. This loss is in line with the other losses."
Mm-hmm.
And because he did a good claims investigation, nobody thought it was a good idea not to pay that claim. That one thing. And so they went out and spent $30,000 on that claim instead of spending $60,000 paying the claim and paying for attorneys and paying for experts and paying for everything. And I think that we could go back to the principles of doing a claims investigation. And I fervently believe that most people do not do claims investigations.
Yeah.
Because if you pull a wind report and don't recognize that took spotters to make that thing happen.
That's a whole conversation.
Yeah,
and was it an algorithm? Was
Yeah.
it verified?
Yeah.
If there was no spotter to see the storm, did the storm happen at all?
Right. And
Yeah.
Exactly. And so like it's you know, like you can't you got, I mean, you should be able to look at most things and understand them if you've seen them a lot. Although I'll bet you have loads of fun when you have to deal with like ice dams, the way to ice and snow when they send those adjusters up from the south.
It's interesting. I mean, even during the summer, they can't handle our building codes because we have cold weather building codes. And they're like, it costs how much to do what? You need what?
Yeah.
That's mandatory? Drip cap. What's that?
Yeah.
Kickouts?
Well, I have
Kickout flashing? Do you really need that? Ice and water on the whole. What? Yeah, it's a lot.
We have I had so much fun in Connecticut years ago when they had this way to ice and snow and ice dams, and I actually I like ice dams almost better than anything else. Like to have a whole wall that's a ice cube is just freaking cool. But
yeah,
I'd say to the adjuster, I'd go, "Hey man, did you just come up from Florida?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." I'd be like, "Did you watch the YouTube video?" And they go, yeah, I did. I'm like, "Cool, let's go." but they would but I took this adjuster into this house in Connecticut and I said, "Look, man," I said, there's right at 1,500 gallons of water in this wall. I said, "Let me explain to you what's going to happen here." I said, "If we don't do a controlled thaw on this and we don't do it now," I said, "that wall with that chimney is going to fall. When it falls, it's going to land on the neighbors, which is going to create another problem for you." I said, "But when it falls," I said, "that means the second floor is going to be unstable and the roof's going to be unstable. And you are going to wind up framing about 2/3 of this house before it's said and done."
Right.
And he said, "I don't think I can get anybody to approve that." And I said, "Get your camera." And I used a blade and I just cut a big chunk out of the wall. And I said, "Now knock on it." And he goes, "Oh my God, it's really tight."
Yeah, sometimes the documentation helps.
Yeah. He's like, "How do we thaw it?" I'm like, you have, I said, we call a mitigation company. They'll be able to do it. I said, "But it's going to be," I said, "this entire loss is going to cost you like 30 grand. I said, or this loss is going to cost you 400 grand.
Can do it the right way the first time.
Let's do it. Let's do it now." Yeah. And he goes, "Well, I think it's going to take me a couple of days to get it done." I'm like, no. I said, "You got to call now, right now."
Right.
I said, "Tell them you're going to save them $400,000. And he calls and he says, "I think I can save us $400,000 on this claim." And they said, "How?" And 25 minutes later, the mitigation people showed up.
It's a different conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. There was another one that was 3 doors down where the adjuster did not go well. And it was the most expensive ice dam claim the carrier had had in their history.
Oh.
Because it did exactly the same thing. It took the wall out. it landed this big heavy wall on it, busted the neighbor's chimney.
Mhm.
It, yeah, it was bad.
And you've got like subrogation issues and all kinds of fun things.
Oh yeah.
That could have been avoided.
Yeah. Well, you need to go have the rest of your weekend, and I probably need to eat something in my day. And I still have a few things I got to send out before we're done. But you know, Sarah, I find you to be one of the most interesting creatures in our industry.
Thank you.
I find you to be.
I appreciate that.
I find you interesting because you refuse to stay in a box that's been ascribed to you. Like you just don't. Somebody put the fences up, and you put and you just.
I never was in the box in the first place.
And you just kicked out the fences and said, I don't use those, and you just go to the next thing. And
sure.
And I, like you're somebody I can always bet on because I think you're gonna. I like the way you study processes, and I like the way you study processes because you not only study processes, you do it from like a moral set. Yeah, I think that's really cool, and I think that
it's probably the Canadian.
probably is, But the thing that I love about it is it's not the people who conform perfectly that change the world.
Right.
It's the people who refuse. They told me when I started my estimation firm, they told me that there is no way on God's green earth that's ever going to work. And then they've tried like hell for years to replicate it because it did.
Right.
They just didn't know that they had somebody that had the hard knocks I had to build it because I had seen the whole industry by that point. Most people never see the whole industry. They see pieces of it.
Yes, you had the proper perspective to be able to prescribe and apply the solution.
Yes.
From more than one angle. Yeah.
Yes.
So important.
Yeah. Well,
so important.
Well, like this really smart PA that I met, it was the first PA I ever met. He was an old guy and he was very much a mentor to me. And he was a very old PA, and he said to me, you're going to meet all these people in the industry whose life sucks today. Mm-hmm. He said, if all you can do in the whole world is remind them that there's like actually some good stuff in their life. Yes. He said, you've incrementally done something to pivot them out of it. Yeah. And and when I quit drinking about 10 years ago, because I have an allergy to alcohol, evidently, and but they say in addiction recovery, they say I can't promise you it's going to get better, but I can promise you it's going to get different, and I can promise you that often different is better. So, and
it's simple, but it's not easy.
Right. Right. Hey, I told a PA today. I told a PA today he was having some trouble, and I said, I adopted a child from Bulgaria once, and I'm walking down the street, and I'm behind this man and this woman, or this dad and his daughter, and he's saying nay, and she's saying da, nay, da, nay, da, nay, and they just yapping at each other all the way down things. And that's kind of like a lot of people do in our world. I said, you can't just say you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. I said, I want you to say to this guy, I want you to call him up on the phone. I want you to say to him, I agree with you. I have been wrong often, and I may be wrong right now. Can you help me to figure that out?
Yes.
And he said, why would I do that? Yeah. And I said, because you have to disarm him, because you have to be vulnerable enough to let that be. And he goes, I said, you didn't say you were wrong. You said you were willing to be willing. You were willing to be wrong. And I said, that's a very powerful position. He called me back just before I got on the call with you. And he said, I don't know how that works, but that really works, because he came back to about 80% of where I was for good reason. And I said, see, you gotta quit talking to those people like they're the enemy.
No, you're there to, it is your teammate to uncover a truth.
Teammate to uncover a truth. I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
That is the basis of critical thinking. The basis of critical thinking is you actually have to remove yourself as much as possible from the process. It is not a self-centric process. You're trying to uncover a truth, and you have to understand that the truth may change based on the information available to you.
You know, when I train,
you have to let it go.
When I train public adjusters, I tell them to tell their adjusters that they have to deal with, to say, I'm really excited to be working with you. I want to help make this claim go really well. I want to be assistive.
How can I help you today?
And and I also want to tell you that I'm going to do my very best to not have my ego involved in this.
Incredibly important.
And if you see me having my ego, just call me on it, please, because I just want what's reasonable and appropriate and nothing else.
Yes.
And he said, and that's all I want. So if I step outside that line, just tell me. I would appreciate it. And those guys, those guys that follow that, the first guy I ever taught to do that was the most tatted up human I've ever seen in my life. He had tattoos to here. He had tattoos all over both of his hands. Okay. Like this is not the guy you'd expect to see coming to you as your public adjuster. Okay. He's a he's a teddy bear, but he just looks like he could kill you. Okay. And this guy went out and did that.
Yeah.
And in 6 months started having the carriers refer him work. Because all of them just knew him as this, like, hey, he really likes to work with us. He's just trying to get it done. He's not crazy. And then suddenly his whole brand was different.
That is what you're explaining is exactly why. So the critical thinking course that I teach, we actually start out by unlearning first before we actually get into the content. And it starts at I talk to people all over the country. People call me all the time just out of nowhere. And I love it. I talk to people in so many states. They just call me and they say, so-and-so said you could help with this. And they ask me, how do I do this? And I said, that's not the question you need to be asking. Everyone wants a trick or a tip or how do I get this done or how do I get that done? And you have to remove self first before you can find the truth. And so I start out that critical thinking course with unlearning and how to remove ourselves as much as possible from the entire process, almost as if we are observing, coordinating, and being of service to the truth. And it's extremely important to think this way because people are like, if you want longevity, if you want the enjoyment of what it feels like to be a tool yourself within something greater than yourself, within your work as a vocation, you have to remove yourself. That's why I always go by, non nobis solum nati sumus. It's a phrase by Cicero. We are not born for ourselves alone. And so people always go like, why, how are you so good at being a PA? Or how are you so good at dealing with negativity? Or how do you do whatever it is? How do you enter anything here? And I say, it's not about me. That's the first step. It's about, do you really, it's not for ourselves alone. If you think that I care about claims or adjusting, you're sorely mistaken. It is one part of my reason for existing, that I get to express my purpose of existing that I was born for in the space-time continuum. It is one way, my work as a public adjuster, I get to express my purpose for existence, which is to leave it a little bit better than the way that I was born into this existence, and to see how far I can push this brain of mine. Those are the only two things that matter in my world. Everything else becomes a lot more simple. You'll burn out a lot less, and you'll fight a lot less people. So that's how I start out that course.
That's
And
awesome.
it's,
Well,
you think like that.
well, I think that the burnout, I think the burnout's right there. I think you just explained it, because I think that's, and I get upset with myself because, like, yesterday I dealt with somebody I think is evil. It makes me it puts me in a bad spot, because as hard as I try to have like kinship, he flips his coin and becomes evil very quickly. And nothing I say to him is taken in good faith. So I can't have a vulnerable moment.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult. It's very difficult for me when I'm like being attacked like that, not to return fire.
Yeah.
And so what I have to do, which is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life, is I have to say to him in front of a jury, if you could change the way you're speaking to me, it probably would make everybody here more comfortable, including me.
Yeah.
And he will when I do that, he will come at me harder immediately. And then I will say, I will not stay in your trick bag. And I'm sorry if that upsets you. I don't want to be in that trick bag. I come here for the truth.
Yeah.
And immediately they have to have a sidebar and have the judge try to tell me to stop talking.
Yeah.
And then a few minutes later, he starts it up again. And I look at the judge always and say, I don't think I have to sit here for abuse. I think I have to sit here to deliver facts.
Yes.
Am I wrong about that, Judge?
Yes. That's a good point.
And he told me yesterday, he says, I utterly hate having you in the box. He says, I hate it.
Oh, no.
He said, I hate having you in the box. And I said, why? And he says, because you don't care about the data. You just know what you know, and that's all you're doing.
Yes.
He says, I can't make you care about it in a way that it perverts you. And I don't like that. He says,
It's not about you.
He says, I said, look, this is like going to, all this is a test. That's all it is. I said, I studied all this stuff and you're going to try to trip me up. I said, it's just a test. That's all it is. And I said, and I told him, and I was happy I was honest, because it's better to give a resentment than keep one. I told him, I said, look, I only have one problem with you. You act like a liar a lot of times. I'm not telling you you're a liar. I'm telling you
act like your behavior.
You act like one. And I said, I kind of like you. I said, I find your mind to be very interesting. I said, I think if I could flip the script on you and you could advocate in another way, I said, I think you'd be pretty powerful. And he just looked at me and he said, I'm always just going to be a prosecutor. And I said, yeah, probably. And that was it. But I mean, we'll do it again the next time. And I just have to, I actually love the guy for one thing. He challenges me to stay within my ethics.
Yeah.
And
what a gift.
And that's, sometimes if somebody can give you a defining moment, you should bow your head and say, thank you.
Yes.
And, I just think that, I think that the claims business is one of the weirdest menagerie of mental exercises that you could put in one piece.
Yeah.
And because you have to do math, you have to do facts, you have to do contract law, and you have to deal with all these people with slightly different ways of thinking. Yes. And you have to,
oh my God, I just covered all of this.
Bring them along. Yes. And then in all of that mix,
Mm-hmm.
You have to manage the expectations of the insured
Mm-hmm.
and try to inform them well enough to know that they're going to go through certain cycles. You know, I met some public adjusters just the other day that hired, and they were from Illinois, and they contracted with a psychology group, and they bring them in to meet with their insureds.
Okay.
To start dealing with like the issues they have when they have a claim.
Yeah. It's a lot.
You know what? You know why they did it? I thought it was interesting why they did it. They said because our first and second year PAs feel so responsible for their pain.
Yes.
That they burn out so quick.
Mm-hmm.
And he says by offloading this to somebody more qualified to handle it, the insureds are in better shape to deal with us, and we get to stay in the claim handling world rather than the psychology world. Yes. And I thought, and both of these guys, both of these PAs, one of them was a fireman, and one of them was a EMT before they became this. And that's
so they already knew about compassion fatigue.
So, they knew about it. And I thought that was one of the smartest things I've seen in the industry.
Yes, and that's how I knew about it too, is from my time in volunteering with crisis outreach for chemical dependency, which is how I knew about the 12-step stuff. You know, literally pulling people out of the gutter, like, oh, so-and-so's having a heroin overdose. We got to go get them quick. And, you know, you as a volunteer or someone who does that for work, you are trained. You actually have to do classes on that stuff. So that's beautiful that they brought that into their public adjusting work. That's cool.
I think one thing I always think that's funny about being in recovery from alcohol is, number one, I'm really attracted to people who have that in their family.
Mm.
Like if I'm good friends with you, chances are you probably got something going on. Anyway, but the other part that I find it so interesting is if you ever find somebody who's like a functional alcoholic out in our business, they have this spidey sense that says that you're sober, and that spidey sense makes them run from you. They're like,
really?
Yeah, they're like they'll push away on purpose, and like you'll realize it. Like you're like, why are they doing that? And you realize that's what it is. And it's
that's fascinating.
It's like when people like they learn like recovery, and then they go out and they fall off the wagon. It's the hardest thing in the world because they've got a head full of recovery and a belly full of whatever.
And
so now they've got conflict. And chances are this guy's already got a conflict, and he looks at you and says, "You don't have a conflict. I don't like you." Because it's like a jealousy thing. It's really it's interesting.
That translates into real life too, because I bother a lot of people for that reason.
Yes, you do. I'm sure you do.
Being happy.
That's probably why I like you.
Not caring about having public adjusting be my entire personality, or being right, or being
Sarah,
it's interesting.
I had the same jerk I was testifying in front of yesterday. He chastised me for smiling.
Yeah, I've had people be like, "Why are you so cheery?"
I said, "I'm not." I said, "I know you want me on this train." I said, "But I'm just gonna be happy over here. It's what I got to do." Okay.
Yeah, and you can come with me. Here you go. Come.
Yeah.
Get off the lifeboat and come on the party boat.
So what I told him, I said, "I'm happy. All I'm doing is thinking about your socks. You got the best socks in the whole courtroom."
Mm-hmm.
He says, and he looks at me. He's like, "I said, you do." I said, and he says, "I said, show them to everybody. They'll like him." He pulls his leg up. I'm like, "See, good socks."
See, give them a little cognitive dissonance, snap them out of it for a second, and maybe they'll get on their way at some point.
You can't make certain people, you can't make certain people do that, but that's part of what you talk about.
You can plant seeds, though. That's the beautiful part. As long as you let go of the outcome, you never know when something you've said to someone or anything that you've done, because you're only focused on serving the truth, will affect them later. You might never see it, though. And that's part of the reason you have to let go of any outcomes.
Yeah. At one time, years and years ago, I fired a guy. I fired him because he had a little drinking problem, and he was messing with one of his. He punched one of his workmates.
Damn.
He was just like, I said, you got to go now, and I fired him. He's from Illinois. He went back there, and 7 years later, he rings my phone. And he called me every name in the book on the way out the door. 7 years later, he called me on the phone. And he said, when I got home, I walked in the room and saw my brother and said, I just got shit canned again. He says, because I'm a drunk. He goes, how about you? And his brother goes, yeah, me too. That's why I'm here watching TV. He says, we got to go get some help. And he and his brother got sober. And 7 years later, they own one of the 3 largest construction companies in the state they're from.
That's awesome.
And he said, if you hadn't kicked me to the curb, he said, if you hadn't loved me right out the door, he said, then I wouldn't have done this. And he said, and I owe everything to that day.
Yep, you got to be kind and loving, never nice.
Oh, yes. All right, let's end it there because that's good. That's good. I mean, that's a nugget. Kind and loving, but
never nice.
Hey, I've so enjoyed talking to you. We ought to do this more often.
Same here. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
You take care. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Alrighty.
Bye.